It's a matter of opinion if I'm right, but I'm leaving no for now to go outside, putting chores and obligations on our part.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Matter of Opinion. I'm your boy Walls P,
I'm your girl, Erica.
and on today's episode, we got updated information on Shanquella Robinson's case. So, as we all know, last week, January 9th, it was Shanquella Robinson's 26th birthday. And during that time, friends and family came together and was pushing for justice for Shanquella Robinson. They also had a balloon release Sunday afternoon at Betty's Ford Memorial Gardens in Charlotte. And at that gathering, they made sure to put it on notice that we will not be silent and we will continue to push for justice for Shanquella Robinson.
They can't silence her. They silence her. They can't silence us. Justice will be served.
Now, at that time, information came out suggesting that Mexico did not do their diligence when they were presenting the FBI all the information to wrap up this case, and Shanquella Robinson can get justice and the family can finally get justice that they deserve. Fast forward to now, a week later, since that information came out, Mexico then responded with a press conference basically saying, we did our diligence, we're waiting on the US to put the pieces together, make this extradition happen so that justice can finally be served. In my opinion, with this information, it basically seemed like the authorities are doing a lot of finger pointing as far as who's responsible for what. So with that being said, Miss Erica, I know you basically did all the research and everything like that breaks all this information down. So do you want to take the time to break down this information and see why this finger pointing is going on?
Of course. The United States themselves launched an independent investigation by the FBI sometime in November once the Shanquella Robinson story started having public outcry from her family, things like that. Going to present day, you had a former FBI assistant director, Chris Swecker, was asked some questions to help understand the FBI's process with the extradition treaty process to Mexico. When he was speaking, he basically said, hey, yes, there is a treaty. It has to be an extraordinary case. And then with it being with the Mexican government, he said that it could be really hit or miss when you deal with their prosecutors, when you deal with the federal police down there and the judicial system itself, just because there is some kind of corruption going on in Mexico, but he didn't say that in so many words. So he's stating that the Mexican government itself is pretty hit or miss, and it's one, due to their competency, two, their motivation to actually get things moving in the case. So usually in that case, it's one of two things. It depends on one, how high the profile is on the case. The more media attention, the more public outcry, the more motivation the Mexican government has to work the case, get the case completed, and get some kind of justice. He also stated that for the U.S. and the FBI's process, they have to have evidence in their hands before they can actually introduce the evidence into the United States courts. And all of this has to be done by the treaty. So that means there's a lot of ribbons and bows and formal paperwork requests that have to go back and forth before you can even start the process. So therefore, this can be a painstaking, laborious, bureaucratic process. And with the Mexico, it's even more so if they're not giving the information as fast as possible, also as correct as possible as well. He then went on to say that a complete investigation could take months.
Now, my question about this taking months is you have video evidence that clearly shows what happened. You also have the people communicating afterwards about what happened, lying to the parents about what happened, actually showing up to the house. It's so much information that is there that proves something fishy is going on. So I don't understand this process of why would it take months? I understand this happened in Mexico. There's a lot of moving parts, but there is insurmountable evidence that's pointing to a crime was done and these people should get extradited. But that's just my opinion. That's just my opinion on it. Erica P., let's continue.
On January the 13th, you actually had the Attorney General from Baja California, sir, that held a press conference. So his name was Daniel De La Rosa Anaya. In his press conference, he basically goes, there is no impunity in this case, meaning no exemption from punishment. Everything is under investigation. He stated that the Mexican government already asked for the extradition of the person responsible for killing Shanquella Robinson. He also previously stated that she died from a direct aggressor. He made comments previously about the video surfacing showing her being attacked, and stated that the suspect was not officially named at the time to protect this case. He also stated that his office is working with the U.S. authorities. He stated that Mexican investigators asked the U.S. authorities for interviews with the other people that went on the Cabo trip to determine if they should also face charges. You have to think about it. At this time, it can only be an interview because there's no one named, and you cannot interrogate somebody if they're not under arrest. It is also very important that the Mexican obtains the court orders with regards to whoever is responsible for this act, but to also leave it open if there are any accomplices to this act as well. He also states that the lack of information and development in this case could be potentially due to red tape. The red tape that I'm talking about is the treaty between the United States of America and the Republic of Mexico for the extradition of criminals and the protocols that need to be followed with it.
And if the red tape is still confusing you, pretty much it's the official routine or procedure marked by excessive complicity, which results in delay or inaction. So pretty much everything is delayed due to the red tape because they have to go through specific steps in such a complex case because this is something that happened outside of the country. So since it happened outside of the country, there's proper steps that have to be taken verbatimly in order for the extradition to happen or even an arrest to happen. So that's what the red tape does as far as like making everything so hush-hush in layman's terms.
A former federal prosecutor stated that the U.S. Attorney's Office cannot just unilaterally bring murder charges when a U.S. citizen kills another U.S. citizen in a foreign country. It must be approved by the Department of Justice in consultation with the Secretary of State.
Now, he ended the press conference by saying an immigration alert has been requested, so if the suspects enter or exit the country, they getting arrested on site. But let's think about it. Why would any of them go back to Mexico? You got to be dumb if you're going to go back to Mexico. But it's still good that they're putting that protection in there because you never know. Sometimes criminals do the darndest things. Let me not say criminals. Sometimes people who are under investigation, they do the darndest things. So who knows?
2 separate investigations open right now. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so we have the original investigation because this alleged crime happened in Mexico. So
Right.
the Mexican authorities opened their own investigation and they found that a femicide, which is a killing of a woman, that something happened in that villa. So the Mexican authorities then issued an arrest warrant for one of the friends. They have not named that person, as you mentioned earlier. So that was the Mexican side. But, you know, we have American citizens involved. So that's now why the FBI, we're nearing that 2-month mark for the FBI's investigation. And they're also trying to figure out what happened because, again, you have those Americans, they break into U.S. laws. And then you have the whole thing of Mexico trying to send them back. So then it's a lot of components. But, yes, 2 independent investigations.
It gets complicated. I know you talked to a former FBI agent. How long can an investigation like this last when you're talking about, you know, multiple components in different countries?
Yeah, so that has been the question that everybody wants to know.
Right.
Like, you know, we're in January. When is something going to happen? When are people going to be arrested? When are we going to know the outcome? And, you know, talking to Chris Swecker, who's a former assistant director for the FBI, he told me it could take months. And the reason why is, you know, you want to think about it. You know, normal cases that we cover here on WBTV, it involves Americans here in the city of Charlotte or, you know, in local.
Right.
You have local agencies, police departments, sheriffs that can make those arrests.
Right.
You have another country now in Mexico, so it
a lot
complicates
different.
things. And then, you know, what Chris Swecker also told me is that the Mexican government is not really forthcoming. So you have all of that to combat and try to figure out. It can take months because then you have to go, what he told me was treaties and all these different laws. That eventually has to go with the court system.
Right. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
In my opinion, like I said, it seems like a whole lot of finger pointing because the public outcry is putting pressure on the FBI. Then you have in Mexico, they're losing money because this villa cannot be rented out. It's making people question going to Cabo. That's Mexico losing money from tourists that would go there. So it would be in their best interest to try and wrap this up quick as possible. And the reason why I say it's finger pointing is because once the U.S. came out and said, hey, they didn't give us the information that's needed for us to do this extradition or for us to do our diligence to get our ducks in a row, Mexico immediately replied. It was like, nah, ain't no foul play here. We doing everything that we got to do. So put that on them, not on us. We did our part.
The Mexican government, which is really dicey, it's hit or miss when you deal with the prosecutors and the federal police down there or the judicial police down there. They're hit or miss in terms of their competence, number one. Number two, their motivation to actually get moving on the case. So we have to get the evidence in our hands before we can actually introduce the evidence into U.S. courts. That's all done by treaty. You have to have what we call predication to open up a full investigation, which is reasonable facts that indicate that a crime has been committed, a federal crime has been committed. And that's it. I mean, but it's not guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. It's not probable cause. It's just reasonable indications. Pretty sure the FBI is looking at the electronic evidence very closely.
There is no impunity in this case. Everything is under investigation.
Baja California Sur Prosecutor Daniel De La Rosa Anaya says he has asked for the extradition of the person responsible for killing Robinson. He says his office is working with U.S. authorities.
It is important to obtain the court order with regard to whoever is responsible to this, but also if there were any accomplices.
That's my opinion on the subject matter. Erica P., what is your opinion on it?
My opinion, to be honest, I feel like Mexico dropped the ball in the beginning, because I felt like they took people's word for it instead of actually physically doing the preliminary investigation before they allowed the tourists to leave. I feel like, yes, the FBI came in at the 9th hour because you had the public outcry. So they're like, hey, we'll try to help. Let's see what we could do. But I feel like there's going to be a lot of back and forth until someone really takes the time, pull the resources, and get it handled. Because guess what? You're already working on month 2. Yes, it's going to take some time, but the longer this case drags on, the longer the family itself is not going to have closure. That means the longer the suspects are out living their best lives.
Here's a question for you, because we all know Mexico dropped the ball, right? But once they dropped the ball, they quickly fast-tracked, presented all the information to the U.S. so that an extradition can happen and justice for Shanquella Robinson can happen. The way I see it, U.S. is held accountable because if they have all the information there, what's holding up the process of them doing their diligence so justice can be served?
The problem is, what all information? No one's really coming out and saying, hey, this is what we have, because you don't want to mess with the case itself. The problem is Mexico could say, hey, we sent all the information, but if you omitted certain things, if you don't have the full picture, how are you going to be able to take this to a U.S. court? Because remember, each country has their own set of laws for what's acceptable in court. So that's the other thing. It's like, hey, what's acceptable in your court may not be acceptable in mine. So maybe I am asking for more information, and maybe you have it, maybe you don't. And if you don't have it, it's like, okay, well, how do you find out the information when the people are not readily there anymore? How do you continue with it if these people aren't doing the interviews for you? Because remember, an interview is basically a conversation. It's not, hey, you're under arrest and now you're under investigation. You can't do certain things that you would if you were surveilling in the U.S. because it happened in the U.S. So it's almost as if both parties' hands are tied.
No, I get that, but I guess my thing is, if you have a video of somebody being attacked, then the person died, and then there's more video and information surfaced that the body was moved post-mortem and everything like that. I understand you got to go through channels, but to me that's a closed and shut case as far as if there was foul play, or is it indictable at least for you to arrest the person. So even if you got to go through proper channels and everything like that, those things are indictable in the U.S. Forget what is going on in Mexico's court cases or whatever, or what can be in the U.S. Something like that you can be arrested for and investigated, and charges could be put on you. So that's why I'm saying, in a case like that, with the information that's given, just those basic informations, that should be enough to arrest somebody. What is your take?
But the problem, I was going to say, the problem for me is, though, Mexico has to have all their ducks in a row first. They got to send the information, then the FBI has to approve the information, and then a court has to look at the stuff. Once the court looks at it, then it's like, okay, extradition granted. Until all of those checks and balances happen, nothing else is going to happen with this case right now.
And that's why I'm a firm believer on saying that these authorities, they're pointing fingers at each other, because Mexico is saying, I presented this information to them, and U.S. is saying, oh, we need information, yada, yada. Both parties are pointing fingers at each other at this point. That's the way I see it. With that being said, enough of what we think on the subject matter. What do you guys think on the subject matter with this new information that's presented to us? Do you blame the U.S.? Do you blame Mexico? Do you see it as a bunch of finger pointing? At the end of the day, I just want justice. I want these people to be apprehended and extradited to Mexico. That's what I'm looking for. I want results. That's what I want. But in the meantime, do you see it as finger pointing? Do you see it as Mexico didn't do their diligence? Or do you see it as the U.S. is just dragging their feet? We would love to hear your take on this subject matter. So don't be shy. Drop the comments. Let's talk about it. If it's your first time here, consider hitting that subscribe button and clicking that notification bell. And don't forget to follow us on our other social media platforms. The links are in the description. Like this video, share this video, comment on this video. That's going to do it for this episode. I'm your boy, Walls P.
I'm your girl, Erica.
Like we said, we will keep you guys informed on whatever Shanquella Robinson updates come out. Until then, we will catch you guys on the next episode. Peace.
Peace.
It's a matter of opinion.